Thank you to everybody for being here. It's great to see faces of people who are interested in our program as prospective students. Hope to have a chance to connect with and meet with some of you. And especially it's wonderful to see all of our panelists who all were really wonderful students in the GLPP program over the past few years. So it's just great to think about all of you and the paths that you've been on and the success that you've had, and to think about how that's connected to your experience as being GLPP students. So let me introduce them all to you. We have, starting at the end here, we've got Colleen Fonseca. Colleen graduated from our program in 2018, and she is now the Deputy Director of the Office of Economic Opportunity in the city of Providence, Rhode Island. I think she is the person who came the farthest today of everybody on our panel. Next, we've got Jenna Connolly, and Jenna graduated in 2016 from the GLPP program, and then she went into the GLPP track of the Master of Public Administration program. So that's something that she has some good information about, and she graduated from that program in 2017. And her current position is as Communications and Events Manager at the Citizens Housing and Planning Association. Then we've got Julie Bakoian. And Julie graduated from a program in 2014, and she was a manager of legal services at Healing Abuse Working for Change, which is a organization working on domestic violence and violence against women on the North Shore. And finally, we have Heather Magnussen. She graduated in 2019, so she's our most recent graduate. And she has become just recently the Responsible Travel and Sustainability Manager at Audley Travel. I'm not going to spend a lot of time giving you more details about their bios because I think that's going to come up as they answer questions, so we want to leave time for that. But they all have very interesting stories to tell, and as you've heard, covering a variety of issues like violence against women, affordable housing, economic opportunity, and environmental sustainability. So we are going to do this as a round robin. We've got 5 different questions, and I'm going to be asking them to the panelists and give each panelist a chance to answer the question, and then we'll move on to the next question. Let me just ask, are all of you able to stay to the end so people will be able to ask questions of you? So, okay, so since you both all can do that, we're going to wait and ask you to hold your questions until the end, because I think that works better for the flow of the program. And so make note of any questions you have, and we'll be happy to give you space to ask them and to have them answered. So, our first question for our panelists: what was your motivation for wanting to get into the field of politics and policy, and what was the path that led you to your current position? So why don't we start from the end with Colleen.
So hi everyone, again I'm Colleen. It's so great to see you all here today. So in thinking about my motivation for wanting to work in government and politics, I think it really starts with like my mom. She is an educator and she has been a public school teacher for the last 20 or so years. And so I was always like interested and like borderline obsessed with like protecting young children and like making sure that like they were well taken care of, and that anything that us adults could do to make sure that the world is a safe place for them, that would happen. And so initially I wanted to be like a NICU doctor. I wanted to actually be delivering babies at Women and Infants Hospital in Rhode Island. And I actually interned there as a high school student and realized that was not what I wanted to do. And then I had the opportunity, I just volunteered a lot at a bunch of elementary schools in like the area that I went to undergrad at St. John's University. And I realized that a lot of the teachers were saying a lot of the things that my mom was saying in a totally different state, just about how like the lack of connection of government and like government officials to actual people on the ground. And so I was volunteering at this organization, like helping children with their literacy that had nothing to do with like my grades, internships, or anything like that. It was just something I enjoyed doing. And I decided to take a leap to intern with a city councilor in the New York, Queens area. And on my first day, I was put into a meeting with this city councilor, and he basically went off about how he despised the residents and how they were awful, and that like they didn't deserve like anything and quality of anything. And I was just so outraged because I thought about like my students that I was working with in this like school setting. How could you talk about like my students like Jeremiah like that? And so that just reinvigorated me, and I went to work for the Brennan Center for Justice, one of the country's leading think tanks on voting rights. And so I interned there, and I just became very involved in voting rights and elections, politics, government, helping candidates run for office. And I came across this program, which was really the icing to what is now my career now. This program really helped me a lot in that way, just helping me figure out like what was actually next. Did I answer that? Yeah.
Thank you. Jenna?
So I would say that I first became kind of mission-oriented here in undergrad at UMass Boston. I did the Beacon Voyages for Service trips, which are alternative spring break trips. My first one was in Galveston, Texas, so cleaning up after one of the hurricanes. I think it was Ike. But I kind of saw on the ground how much difference that kind of work could make. So I kind of got the mission-based bug, as you will. So I finished up school. I did 2 years of AmeriCorps, so kind of solidifying that a little more. If you haven't heard of AmeriCorps, it's kind of a full-time service-based organization. You sign up for a year at a time. I did 2, and so then when I came back home to Boston after that, I decided to try out, stay mission-based, but I ended up in accounting somehow. I think the pay was good. I had trouble finding a job when I got back home, not having as many connections since I've been gone for 2 years. But then I started getting the bug a little bit again, and I ended up reaching out to Mass Now, a feminist organization here in Massachusetts, and seeing if I could volunteer. And I think that is when it really clicked that if I wanted to do the most or have the most impact, it was through legislation, because that's all they were working on at the time. You know, they taught us writing letters to the editor and all that. So it kind of clicked for me then, and I think that's about the time that I joined this program, and that kind of my knowledge and my passion for that grew a little more. And so from there, I ended up getting involved where I lived, which is Brighton. So I ended up getting a part-time job doing organizing around a home ownership program in Allston-Brighton. And then that kind of brought me more into the housing world. And now I have made the move to CHAPA, which is an affordable housing policy organization. So that's my story.
Great. Thank you. Julie? This one? Yeah, actually, we can pass this one down, too.
I'll just project. Hi, I'm Julie Bakoian, and thank you all for being here tonight. And it's a real pleasure to actually be back at UMass Boston. It's been a few years since I've been here. So my trajectory was a little bit different. It wasn't as linear. I had graduated many moons ago with an undergraduate in history and political science, always with a focus on going to law school. I ended up moving to New York City, taking a job at an audiobook company as an editor, and then I moved to England, and then I found myself back in this area around 2009. And I was still considering what I wanted to do, and I ended up volunteering for Hawk, who is now my employer, as a legal advocate. And I was volunteering in the courts and doing crisis intervention work, which is so needed, but at the same time I was looking around at what we were doing, and there wasn't any systemic change, right? So you're kind of plugging a hole, plugging a hole, plugging a hole. But I wanted to do more. So I was thinking about law school, and I ended up going to a meeting for the Essex Commission on the Status of Women. And one of the speakers there mentioned that she had gone through this program. And I was like, oh, kind of an aha moment, like thinking about politics and policy work, and thinking back to my undergraduate work in public policy. And so in comes Muna. I called, met with Muna. I went to some of these events and really got a feel for the program, and it felt like the right next step. So 2013 I enrolled. I ended up going back to volunteering with Hawk, but at the same time we got a grant for full-time legal advocates. So with the background I had already had and my background from UMass Boston, I was hired in that position, and it's just had such an impact on what I've been doing now in terms of thinking about systemically how we can make changes within our program and also on a larger level. So that's my story.
Cool.
Thank you.
So my name's Heather, and thanks everybody for coming. I can remember sitting in your shoes and having no idea what I wanted to do, so hopefully this will help a little bit. So I've always been interested in helping people and volunteering from a young age, like everyone here. And when I graduated college, I did some volunteering work abroad in Kenya, and I came back and ended up in the travel field just because I was really passionate about travel, but I always was looking for ways that I could link my travels to helping people. And so after a while in sales, I lived in the area, found out about this program, and thought, well, everybody always tells me I need to know about politics, but it was never something I was really interested in. But everyone said, well, if you want to get into the nonprofit world and you want to make a difference, you really need to know more about politics. So kind of was like, all right. So I came to one of these events, like you guys are here today, learned a little bit more about it, and that's kind of how I ended up in this field. So currently right now, I'm taking on like a role of sustainability and responsible travel manager. So what I'm doing there is it's pretty much like corporate responsibility. So helping the company come up with a vision that we could help people long term. And for me, I still am not like, oh, I love politics. But what I'm able to do is take what I've learned, and I really enjoy the business side of things. And I thought, well, a corporation who has money to give, if you're doing it in the right way, you can really make an impact and try to work with even people overseas with the policies over there, figuring out, okay, how can you actually help the people and make sure that the money is going to them, and the people who are going to travel and are seeing these wonderful cultures really want to help, and finding a way that they can make that impact without damaging, the culture that they're also going to see is really important. So that's kind of my journey to this program.
All right. Thank you very much. Next question, or set of questions. What did you get out of the program? How did the program enable you to move into the career you were looking for? And what skills and knowledge did you gain that you are applying in your current or recent work? And just want to note that you can include both your academic work and your internship in your answer to this question. So should we go back the other direction? Why don't we start with you?
Sounds good. Just look at the question again. So the way that this program really helped me is, I think that the way that the program is built is it actually was built really well for me, because it took the business side of things and the leadership side and how to influence within the business world, and then it also linked with the critical thinking is probably the biggest thing that I came out of that. I think that prior to this program, probably looked at like a blurb on a website and thought, oh, look, they do good things, that's great, and kind of moved on or made my decision off of like a quick blurb. But from this program, doing a lot of the research work and thinking about some of the topics that I had always been passionate about, being able to write a paper about microfinancing and figure out, okay, at the end, did it really help the community or not, was really eye-opening to me, because I hadn't thought of all of the different factors that went into that. And, you know, there was just so much that I really didn't know. And now in my current job, I think it's really important because I'm looking at the vision and looking at the different charities that we support overseas and the different charities that we support locally. And all of a sudden I have all these questions that I don't think I would have ever thought of had I not done this program. So it's really helped me in challenging my own thinking and reaching out to others and trying to put together everything I learned in the program, all the different opinions that I've heard, to try to make the best decision possible to try to make a difference.
So for me, when I started this program, I had been out of academia for quite some time. So bringing myself back into a structured format, reading, writing, research, analysis was so important to really brush up and hone those skills. And the program is so rigorous, but also allows you to focus on what you are specifically interested in. For me, it was always focusing on domestic abuse, and I was really able to dig into legislation, break it down, look at research both within our state and nationally, and really take a look at pieces of this subject that I was interested in and look at them in a different light. And really focusing on that policy piece and the legislative piece. Bringing that back to my role now is so important. It's like we can have the best legislation, but if it's not going to trickle down, it really doesn't serve its purpose. So for us, we're bringing this information to our clients who are unaware of so many pieces of legislation and laws that apply to them, affect them. For example, their employers may be unaware that they have specific rights, or their housing authority may be not addressing their needs. We're able to help them break down those pieces that are missing and make it accessible to them and really support them. So for me, being able to bring that into my role has been, I can't emphasize how helpful that's been. It's like I was doing this work before, but it adds a new dimension and a new depth to how I'm approaching the work that I do. What else do we need? And I think, you know, one thing that has been critical as well is I interned with Jane Doe, Inc., who is our state coalition for domestic violence and sexual assault. I made so many connections in the field, and I was exposed to so many events and experiences, and given the ability to sit in on meetings in the State House. So just having that internship has been, I can't tell you how impactful it's been now. I'm working with some of these folks 5 years later in a completely different capacity. So does that, I think, answer the question?
Jenna?
So I would agree with the critical thinking and the policy analysis piece. I'm not currently working in policy analysis, but in communications, it helps me think through kind of as a second set of eyes on, okay, we're announcing we endorse this policy or what have you. I'm making sure it's getting communicated in the right way to the right audiences at different times, the same time. So you really do need that overthinking type of lens, even in communications, not looking at how a policy will trickle down, but how to frame it to different audiences. And I would say my internship was beyond helpful. I worked at Planned Parenthood at the time, so I was able to intern there as well in a different department. So for the first half of my internship, we did policy analysis on sexual assault on college campuses, and then the second half we did work with our grassroots organizing groups to see what did they want to work on, how could we get them a grassroots organizing package, and that I ended up using to get the job at the Olsen-Brighton Community Development Corporation, which is where I went after that. So I sent them that whole grassroots package from my portfolio. So it was a direct connection into a new job for me that set me on the housing path. So the internship was really great, and it was amazing that I could do it at my work too, because as you'll learn, it's a big course load if you're working full time. So being able to work it into my day like that was super helpful.
So I think for me, one of the key things that brought me to the program in general was the uniqueness that this program in particular had around really talking comprehensively and like seriously about the policy issues that are facing this country, and really helped with the different layers and helping peel the onion of many of the policy issues and problems that this country is facing. And the elephant in the room that I was seeing in every single policy conversation, I previously, when I was in the program, I was working for Sheriff Steve Tompkins and working inside of the Nashua Street Jail doing like criminal justice reform work. And the elephant in the room was race, gender, economic mobility, if people could get money, sexual orientation, gender identity. Like there were all these isms that were like in the air that no one in a policy room could actually speak to and had any real solutions to. And so I had like vented my frustrations about this, about how we were constantly creating policies in the city of Boston and in the state without actually listening to people who were actually going through the criminal justice system themselves. We were not centering their voices in the policies that we were creating that were supposed to help them. And I had vented that to an employee, one of my colleagues at the department, and she ironically was the previous commissioner, the previous president of the Commission on Women, the Women's Commission in the city of Boston, for the previous Mayor Menino. And she told me about this program, and I was like, this is literally the only other program besides one in New Jersey, and I'm not going to move, that actually is going to really talk about these different layers. I looked for 2 to 3 years at different grad schools, and I was very underwhelmed and underimpressed with staff diversity and the interesting stuff that these professors were actually churning out. And I was super interested in like the policy and research that was happening here. And so I, at the time, was working with Sheriff Tompkins, and if you're not familiar with him, he was very, and still is a very big proponent of bringing in diverse elected officials into the city of Boston and across the state of Massachusetts. And so at the time, he was endorsing candidates like Andrea Campbell when she was like a no-name person, and she's now the city council president. Like Michelle Wu was helping and supporting her. A bunch of Liz Miranda, who's now in the State House, Ayanna Presley, who when she was a counselor, and I was very interested in how can we keep getting more women of color, more underrepresented people into government and politics that are actually going to turn around the microphone and ask the residents, how do we solve the problems that's facing you in your community? And so this program gave me a really strong research background. I was able to peel back the onion, and Professor Jefferson, she left, but in her public policy class, she literally framed and did an outline of a paper that I still have, and I've literally rewritten the same paper on 3 different policy proposals using the structure that she gave me, and have used it to inform a policy and proposals that I'm submitting to the mayor to recommend as part of his 2-term priorities in the city of Providence. So I really like this program. I'm able to really look at the data sets for some of our programs. We do workforce development programs, and I can, through this program, was able to really see who are the residents that we're serving, what's their race, what's their gender, what are some of the barriers that they may be experiencing, realistically, not from a policy book perspective. And I'm able to have really transitioned the work in the mayor's office around workforce development and economic development to really be centered on residents. I mean, we've increased the number of young people of color in our programs. Previous to me being there, they were I think 50, maybe 40 to 50% of young people in our programs, where we're employing 1,200 kids in a year, were children of color. And in 1 year, now that number is like 50%, well, 60% of all the young people in our program are from the 3 highest unemployment zip codes in the state. And that's only because like the layering and the research that I've been able to do, both like in Professor Jefferson's class, who just left, and also there was a research methods class that was really like, I can really see what's really happening here in a way that my other peers and other people in the city that I'm working in just don't have. And that's what makes me unique, because I did this program specifically.
Very much. Great. All right, great. Those are wonderful answers. And now for our next question. What are your key responsibilities in your current position? And what does your day-to-day workday look like? What parts of your workday do you like the best? And which parts would you change if you could? Colleen, you want to start?
So I serve currently as the Deputy Director of Economic Opportunity for the City of Providence. I actually had graduated from this program in May of 2018, and I was like about to jump and leap into a different job or position, but I literally had like zero idea what I was going to do. And so I actually I applied to this position in July, like even applying was like a big deal for me, and like I didn't even have like the confidence and courage to do that. Yeah, I know Muna's looking at me crazy right now. But like the program after it ended, I was really like, confident and like I'm ready to make the jump, I'm ready to make the leap. And so I got the job in November after I graduated from this program, which was like awesome. And now my responsibility is there's technically not a director of economic opportunity in the city. So I basically essentially like am running this department. And so what is economic opportunity? In our office, it's really the mission to break cycles of intergenerational poverty across the city of Providence. And we do that through 3 major like functions. The first one is workforce development trainings, 1. Number 2 is small business development. And number 3 is minority and women business procurement and like strategies to make sure that we're incorporating them. So on a day-to-day, my day looks very different. There's 3 functions, but there's probably like 4 or so programs in each of those functions that I just explained. So I went from a portfolio of managing like 10 staff when I worked in this program to managing like 60, including like a one-stop job delivery system that's like it's federal dollars that come in to do workforce development training. So if you're unemployed, you can come into this job center and technically get like any types of services. And I also run in the workforce development bucket our summer youth employment program under the mayor's city dollars, which is like $1.3 million invested in summer youth employment across the city to make sure that young people are actually getting internship experiences. To actually like be ready for the workforce and be like competitive when they're adults and even now. So a day really looks different. I usually start by like checking into Asana, which is like this digital platform that we have for managing projects. Every once in a while, the mayor will like tag me in an Asana task and be like, I bumped into this resident who wants a summer job. Can we connect them? And I'll be like, well, this young person's already in one of our programs, but I'll make sure they get a summer job. So our mayor is very active in all things in the city. And so anything that's kind of coming in from an employment perspective, we also in my office, through like the workforce development bucket and minority and women business buckets, every single business and developer that comes into the city of Providence that gets a tax break has to go through my office. So they have to have like a first source agreement, which is essentially like a contract that they're promising if we give them tax breaks as a city that they're going to hire Providence residents. And so really my office just figures out the best ways to make sure that Providence residents are being hired, that they're included in every single like new business and developer that's coming into the city. And if they don't have the skills, then we provide the funds to make sure that they're skilled up. And we also make sure that different businesses in the city are also getting city dollars. Like, so if like the Providence Police Department is getting boots and like we've given like millions of dollars to the same exact company to like do boots for Providence Police for like the last 30 years. Like, hey, there's actually a Providence business that makes boots and can make it cheaper, and they're a minority and women-owned business. And so thinking about how do we, as a city, also use the like our procurement system to actually do economic mobility work in the city.
Thank you very much. Jenna.
You said Asana, and I was like, you check into Asana when you start? I was like, can I work with you? But no, Asana. I knew what you meant after you started explaining it. And I was like, that's why I was like, what? I do communications and events, and like she said, my day is different every day. Do we have an event going on that's coming up? Most recently, we did our huge fundraiser at the end of October, so that's 1,300 people coming to the Boston Convention Center, which is awesome, but also a lot of work. And now that we're done with that, I can focus on communications full-time until our events pick back up next year. So right now, it's a lot of social media, it's a lot of graphic design, it's a lot of monitoring the news and getting interviews for our CEO. Today, we did one, and that takes up a lot more time than you think, just nailing them down, making sure everyone's available to speak and knows what they're going to talk about, and getting everyone checked in. When we have events that aren't at the convention center, we do a lot of educational forums to develop the field, so it'll be on a specific topic in housing. Some are fair housing and exploring that, or 40B, or construction innovation and design and climate resiliency. So we do a lot of those throughout the year to help bring in more professionals and give them little primers on those. The best and worst parts I would change about my day are probably the same, in that in nonprofit life you can wear many hats. And sometimes that's really awesome, and you get to learn a lot of new things. And sometimes it's, I really just want to specialize on this one thing, or, you know, I want to learn more about this, but oh my God, a press release has to go out, and I can't do it all. And I think that's true across nonprofits. You can never do it all, and in public life as well. There's always more work, or more families, or more people who need help, and you can't do it all, and you have to prioritize within your work day and self-care and all that, and make sure your workload's manageable. So I've learned a lot. I didn't know graphic design at all until I came to this job. I used Canva, which, if you don't know, use it. It's great. It's an online template-based graphic design program that can really change your marketing for your organization. But now I know InDesign, and that's awesome. I didn't know that, and now that's a skill that I can take with me to the next job or continue at my current job. So I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I applied for, a graphic design job right out the gate. But some days I don't want to do that. Some days I want to focus on the copywriting for our website, or making sure the event's going to go smoothly and everything's taken care of. So it's tough to juggle. I think it's worth it because you do learn a lot of new skills, and especially in the beginning, you find out what you like the most. But right now, I guess that's my struggle because I want to specialize.
Thank you. Julie.
So, as the manager of legal services at Hawk, my role is varied as well. I wear a lot of different hats. It's both administrative and direct service work. Hawk serves 23 cities and towns in the North Shore, so I oversee 5 courts, 12 volunteers, and 3 full-time advocates. In addition, I sit on 3 high-risk teams, which are community collaborations between, for example, the district attorney's office, the police, the local DV agencies, DCF. So it's bringing together different community stakeholders and identifying folks that are at particularly high risk because of the significance of the DV that they're facing. I'm responsible for our grants and our grant reporting, so I do monthly reports as well as yearly reports. I'm responsible for all of our trainings. I'm in court as a legal advocate. I fill in as much as I can and as needed. I've brought a public policy component to our work, so we now are very active in Jane Doe's Legislative Advocacy Day. I set up a public policy table at our annual fundraisers. And I'm constantly responding to, different crisis intervention needs, whether that's our staff, our clients. So I, like everyone else, have a very, very varied day, and no 2 days look the same. I think what I enjoy most about my work, I believe very strongly in the work that we're doing, and I feel very honored and humbled to be able to do this work every day. And my colleagues are so dedicated. I work with 26 phenomenal colleagues who keep me going and are so committed to our clients and the work that they do, and I couldn't ask for a better work environment. I think what makes my job difficult is the lack of resources. There's always a need, as Jenna was just saying, there's not enough resources to go around, and so that limits our capacity. In addition, we're intersecting with a lot of different systems, whether that's the criminal justice system, whether that's the civil probate and family court, whether that's DCF housing. Many of these systems aren't trauma-informed and trained around the dynamics of domestic abuse. So it can create additional barriers and burdens. So that can make the work challenging as we work to help our clients move forward. So I would say that in itself is a daily challenge, but it's also why we keep going back, doing what we do in the nonprofit sector.
Great, thank you. And Heather?
So right now, for my current position, the key responsibility at the moment is just basically making the position. We just created the position about 2 months ago. So my role at the moment is really laying out, okay, what is our vision going forward? Because as a travel company, we've always tried to focus on doing the right thing. And when we travel, we hire suppliers that are local. We've always supported charities. We've always been conscious of our environmental impact, offsetting our flights as a business, offering our clients to do the same. But something we haven't always been great about is talking about it. We're always doing it behind the scenes. Everybody's kind of doing it here and there. But what we've really noticed is that the more people that are talking about it, the more of an impact that you can have. So a lot of travel companies right now are coming out and talking about all the ways that they're trying to make a difference. And probably the part I enjoy the most is talking to all these other travel companies. It's not a competitive thing. We're all working towards the same goal. So like having an animal welfare policy and thinking about the elephants that people are riding and making sure that we don't offer that. Thinking about the children and their child welfare and making sure that we're not visiting schools and having people sing to our tourists. Like that's not conducive for them. There's a lot of negative impact that can have, but over the years, that's just become the norm, and people just haven't thought about it. So a big part of my role is thinking, okay, what are the policies that we want to write and hold ourselves to as a company and hold all the departments to that? And then the next role is, okay, who are the different people that really make an impact throughout the travel? Well, it would be our employees and what we do as an office. It would be our clients who are traveling, giving them the tools to have a positive impact and helping to educate them and letting them make the best decision that they can. It's our suppliers who are on the ground, who typically are the ones that know how to make a difference. They know the cultural norms. They know how we can help clients and how we can make sure that we're sharing their culture, but also protecting it. And then our employees, I mean, we work with so many great people. So I'm really just trying to make a framework of, okay, what is our vision? How are we incorporating it in everything that we do so that it's not something where I'm just constantly reminding people, but everybody's thinking about it, that our clients are thinking about it, and together talking to these other travel companies that are doing great things, we can make a difference. And a good example is just like, this isn't a travel company, but we're going to do our charity of the year, and a company, Climbable, who's focused on climate change and renewable energy, and just meeting with her today, and she's a grassroots company that we're going to support over the next 2 years, and talking about, okay, how can we support you? What money do you need? What money do you need for educating? What money do you need for these different projects, and reaching lower income communities and making sure that they have access to energy, and how can we make it sustainable for everybody? So there's just so many different components. Probably say part I don't like the most is writing. I don't like writing. It's a very different answer to everybody else, but I think that like when you're passionate about something, you just want it to happen, you know, and overnight, but actually like that groundwork and making sure the critical thinking side goes in of like, okay, what is the policy? Okay, how are we going to roll out this policy so that everybody knows about it and everybody wants to follow it? And then how do you continue that momentum and keep that passion when sometimes you are going to make the wrong decision, or sometimes you are going to, one positive impact might have a negative impact, and how do you overcome that and become innovative? And really you need everybody to do that, from your clients to your suppliers to your employees. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. We'll start with you and go in the other direction. What advice would you give to people who might want to get into the field that you are in, however you define that?
Sure. So I would say, like, starting in general and then into my field, I think that, you know, when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, you feel like, okay, I need to do that now. So like, what do I need to do to get there? But actually, just using myself as an example, I mean, I started in customer service, answering all the angry phone calls of people whose payments didn't go through, or they got travel protection and they didn't want it, and just a lot of things that you just wouldn't think about. But actually, over time, I ended up into sales, and I was like, oh well, sales was never something I thought of doing, but I like travel. This is fine. And then I joined a company that I really loved. I was like, oh, I'll do travel. I like talking to people and supporting people. But always in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that I wanted to do something like corporate responsibility or nonprofit. So throughout that time, I thought about, okay, instead of trying to do everything, like, what are the things that I'm doing right now that actually might be helpful later? Like, it's actually really important that we make these sales, because our clients are the ones that are going to these communities and supporting people and supporting the foundation that we have. So my biggest advice would be, like, no matter where you're at, think about what you already have that's going to help you get there, and then fill in those pieces. So for me, that was the certificate program. I thought, okay, I don't actually know how I'm going to get to this corporate responsibility role. There's probably like one at every company, and my company currently doesn't even have one or plans to get there, but I'll just try to get that education now so that when that does become an opportunity, I'll be able to do it. And it just so happened that right when I graduated, that last 2 weeks, I mean, that position came up. I applied for it. I was able to talk about all the things I did, and I was able to get it. So I think that no matter where you're at, don't be discouraged. Just think about what you already have, and then just fill in those pieces from there, and you can't really make a wrong decision.
That's great, thank you. Yeah. Julie?
I would definitely agree with all of that. And also thinking about volunteering. Where I am now is because I started volunteering. Get to know people in the field. I can't tell you how critical it is for at least for my profession to have been in the trenches, like to have done that work and then move into an administrative role. It really informs your role, the work that you're doing, and making connections. I think that's really one of the big things that I came out of this program with. I didn't know how to walk into a room and just strike up a conversation with someone, pass a business card. I was so shy when I joined this program, but I think that having done the internship and all of the different events and speakers and just bringing together all of those different elements, I think it really provided me with a foundation for really getting to know people in the field and really making myself available to people in the field as well. So I would say, learn as much as you can about what you're interested in, what drives you, and if you don't have that experience, get that experience, volunteer.
Thank you. Jenna, pass the mic.
I would agree with everything these two women have said. Volunteer, get to know the players. If you have an issue you care about, find the people who are involved with that issue. If you just care about your community, then get to know those people. And as the communications person, I have to say social media can be big. I don't think it's the only thing that matters. But learning to brand yourself a little bit, make your opinions known. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I think you want that person-to-person contact, but even if it's just finessing your LinkedIn profile and looking like you're ready for those gaps that you want to fill, I think can go a long way. Same thing with resumes, portfolios, and all that. But just not being afraid to embrace the parts that you already have and go forward finding what will fill those gaps.
Thank you. Colleen.
So I would say find out what makes you super angry. I talk about the emotion of anger a lot because if policies weren't the way that they weren't, and if I wasn't so enraged by it, I would not be this driven and this dedicated. And I think that that's kind of like a theme that as women we sometimes shy away from, is like we're not allowed to be like angry in like the workplace and like in the work that we're doing, and it's not an emotion that we're socialized to be like that's acceptable. But like it is like the most powerful like tool in like your toolkit, like as someone in government and politics, because when you're like deflated after like sitting in like legislative sessions that drag on for hours, years, like months, and there's like no progression, and you're like, this is never gonna happen, but then like you remember like, oh, right, this is like a horrible situation. Like there is no way that we can allow this to happen. And then you're gonna have that like that fire and like that like rage, but like don't like scream at people. But like you're gonna have like that rage and that passion to just like go back and like not like just go nonstop for it. Because this industry is like, I'm going to be serious with you. Like there's a lot of burnout. If you don't take care of yourself and if you don't know why you're in it, you're going to like, it's not going to be sustainable for you. So definitely like find out what makes you the most angry, because what makes you the most angry is going to be that one element that's going to carry you through a horrible meeting. Someone's mistaking you for an admin. That happens to me like all the time. And just like whatever, like that's not what I'm here for. Like I'm a little bit upset at like you mistaking me for the secretary that looks nothing like me, but like I'm more upset that like we haven't put as many people to work as we should have. So just like find what makes you angry. And then second, I would say in my role, I get to interface with a lot of employers. So we have like 50 private, nonprofit, and like quasi-public, private like partners that we work with that are employers. And the three things that they're always looking for, even though they like very rarely know how to articulate it very well, is they want people and they want a workforce that is resilient. They want a workforce that knows how to solve problems. Like problem solving is really important, and they want to make sure that people are adaptable. And so in any way that you can, like, and as you're like going through your different experiences, like always like think about like how you're going to categorize like your work and your actions in those three buckets, because those are the three things that employers are always looking for no matter what industry you're in, and especially in government and politics. Like adaptability, problem solving. Like I literally tell like my team, like our job is to put out fires, and that's okay, because I'm like, let's put on our fire hats because we're gonna solve all these problems, and there's gonna be lots of fires, and we're gonna put them all out. We got the biggest hose in the city. So problem solving, adaptability, and resilience. Yeah, that's it.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much. Final question, and then we'll take questions from our audience. What advice would you give to current students and students coming in next year to get the most out of the program? Start with you. Oh, we'll start with Colleen. We're going down this way.
So my advice, is anyone here a current student? Yeah? Okay, great. So current students, first piece of advice, save everything that you do in this class, all the paperwork, all the forms that your professors are gonna give you, all the papers, every single thing, save it in Google Drive, please. It's gonna be super helpful. No matter what like your research is or what projects you're working on, I cannot tell you how many times I have to go back to the assignments that I've done. Like when I first came onto my job, my new current job, This might have to be edited out. But like a few months in, my boss was placed on administrative leave and was fired from the city of Providence for violating procurement law. And so I was literally left like, it was like February. I was like, oh my gosh, like there's no director. Like now everyone's asking me all these questions. And there were a lot of organizational issues in the office that I was working in. And I was able to very quickly look back onto one of the classes that I had taken on like organizational like wellness, or I don't know exactly what the name of it was, but I like went back and there's this thing called like a BART analysis. And I literally did a BART analysis on like my office. I submitted it to like the chief of policy and was like, here are all the issues like spelled out in very like plain terms. Here are my recommendations. Take it or leave it. And she took it. So like seriously save every single thing that you do, even your essay that you're writing when you're getting into this program. Like I have an opportunity right now to go like to speak to different funders like in like, I'm not going to disclose their names, but different funders about a project that I literally wrote my entrance essay in this program on. So like literally just keep everything that you can. Another piece of advice that I would give, because I did see a lot of young women in my program struggle with this, is like really take your internships like super serious. So like there were a lot of like, not a lot, but there were some instances where like, because folks had waited till the last minute, they just kind of like suffered through their internships. And like that is like the biggest waste of your time and your money and like your loans and everything to just like stay in an internship for the sake of finishing it. Because like when I tell you, like as someone who's like doing employment services and helping people get jobs, if you're not passionate and zinged about what you did, like you're wasting my time, and I don't want to deal with that. So really like maximize like your opportunities, and especially the internship. Look for an internship that already has an internship program. As much as possible, try to avoid interning at the State House. I've interned at the Massachusetts State House twice, and their internship program is really not that rigorous. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. But like as much as possible, like if you can like work with like a caucus or maybe like a legislator that you're really passionate about, just don't go into the State House like blindly, like I'm just gonna work for this representative. Really have a purpose to any like internship that you have, and make sure that as much as possible it's structured. Like if you don't have a really strong sense of structure for your internship, especially going into like some like internship placements that aren't as structured, like find a business or like find an organization that has like a very structured and rigorous internship program where like every year they're hiring 25 interns or something to that extent. And also on internships, do not feel like you are doing these employers and these businesses a favor by giving your free labor to do the internship. Like you really need to go into these internships and be thinking about what is the return on your time that you are putting into it. These folks are not doing you a favor by like having you as an intern. Like they're getting something, like they're getting your skill sets, like they're getting your time, like they're getting your projects and your work, and they're gonna like continue to use that after you leave. So really like try and flip the script, and like when you're going to see these internships and doing interviews, like ask for a tour, like ask to see who other people are in the place of business and see if you actually want to work there and if it's somewhere you can see yourself working. Because in the two places that I've interned, I've interned at a variety of different places, and for part of this program, I actually went through basically 3 internships. Like the first 2 didn't really work out that well because I showed up for the first like one, like the supervisor like departed from the position, and the second one just wasn't rigorous. And I was like, I'm not gonna waste, like this is an opportunity. Like there's no other chance where I'm gonna get $3,000 like as like a scholarship to work for an internship. Like this is never gonna happen again. So really just take like your internships like really, really serious, and really think about if you can see yourself in these places. Because 2 places that I interned are 2 of the only places that I've worked full time, and that's at the Sheriff's Department. I started as an intern, and at the City of Providence, where in 2013 I served as a mayoral fellow in a previous administration. So like really, really, really like stay connected to everyone in your internships and just really take it super serious. I'm like the internship queen in Providence, so like I like put kids to work in internships, so I'm like really like psycho about like really take this super serious.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
Jenna.
No, that's good. To some of those same points, I would say, be as strategic as you can about every assignment. If you have a cause that you're passionate about, do that as much as you can. Write about it as much as you can. If you have a bill that really makes you angry, write about it as much as you can. Do the BART analysis on your current organization and hand it to your boss. Those are all things that will help you. I think I jumped around on topics, so I appreciate that I did that, but at the same time, if I had written on housing at the time and handed it to my boss, it may have taken me a little further. But I did more kind of, I guess, passion projects. So it worked out that way too. But if you are trying to fill in your gaps, like she said before, or you are trying to get to the next level, use it to your advantage. It doesn't have to be, let me just pick something and write about it. It really can be to your benefit later. And one thing I was also not that great at was networking. I know that, you work all day, you come to class, it's late at night, it's dark, it's wintry, it's snowing, it's raining. You don't really have the mental energy to be chatting everyone up. And I think that's something I wish I did a little more. I think I found my niche of people and we talked, and that's great, but I could have widened it a little bit more. And I was kind of shy too, and a little bit of an introvert where I kind of just wanted to be comfortable and dedicate all my mental energy to learning, which there's pros and cons, but I do wish I networked a little bit. And you won't be in, even when I went into the master's track, it wasn't as intersectional and diverse and progressive, so you won't get that same environment again. So really cherish it while you're there, and again, use that strategically. You'll meet people who are already working in the field in the same boat as you. Maybe they're a couple steps back, but everyone has something to offer, and even just a listening ear as you're both trying to write these 30-page papers and trying to make it through, that you can't pass that up.
Thank you. Julie?
Okay, so yes, definitely internship. That took me into new realms, and it's still benefiting me now, having interned with the State Coalition Networking. And just to piggyback on that, if you don't have business cards, make business cards. There's a lot of networking events, and I wish that I had done this while I was a student. Scribbling down names and on a piece of paper and passing them around, just make business cards. Women's advice. You will thank me later. And I think self-care. I think that's one thing we forget. This program is really intense. And as you've heard, we've all gotten so much out of it. But take time for yourself, take time to reflect, give yourself, a day of the week, or exercise, but just make sure you are taking care of yourself during this program, because otherwise, like any program, it can feel overwhelming. Use your peers. We had a great cohort. I'm still in touch with folks. So just build on the relationships, and I think that's, the cornerstone of this program, is building relationships, and also, the rigors of the research projects. I was able to do all of my projects around DV legislation, and I was able to do my internship with the State Coalition. So if there is something that you are passionate about, you can really build and grow on that.
Thank you. Heather?
So I think that my advice would be just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. So I think that for me, going into the class, I knew I didn't know much about politics, but also I felt like a little bit of an outsider. So I was trying to, let me think of all these politicky things that I could do so that I can, stay on course. But actually, the great thing about this course is that you're able to pick the topics you want to do, and it's really adaptable to what you want to do. So if I think back, maybe I could have written a paper more about what I'm doing now, which is fine. I learned a lot from the other topics that I did. But, when you're thinking about, like I said prior, thinking about what you have and then what you need, use those papers to fill in the gaps of what you need. And, when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out, just go back to that bigger picture and think about, okay, well, what can I do right now that's going to push me forward? You might not be able to do everything, but what is that one thing that you really wanted to get out initially? Because I think that will really help you get to where you want to be. At the end of it, you'll be able to look back and get what you really wanted.
All right, great. Thank you to all of you. These were such wonderful, thoughtful, creative answers to all these questions. And now it is time for those of you who are in the audience to ask questions of our panelists. So we'll take them, and if you could just, as you give your question, why don't you just give your name and where you're from so we can make a little connection with you, and we'll go back and forth. So who has a question either? And you can ask your question for particular panelists or for the panel in general. Moona, looks like you want to say something.
Oh, no, I just wanted to remind you about the mic, that maybe you can move the mic to the right and people can come up to the mic to make the answer.
That is a very good idea. Okay, so I'm going to put the mic over here. People can come up and speak into it.
Okay, so my name is Opal, and funnily enough, I actually misread the flyer. I didn't realize this was a graduate program, and because I was like about to hop on the elevator for another class, so I just quickly snapped like a picture of it and was like, all right, I should go to this. So it's not until you guys were like talking, and I get the folder. I'm looking more closely at it. I was like, wow, this is not like what I thought it was. But I'm glad that I'm here because I mean I learned a lot from just you guys talking tonight. So my question is. Well, my minor is public policy. I'm a political science major. And I heard a lot of you guys talk about different policies that you guys were involved in making. And I admit that I don't know too much about like the policy making process. You know, I look at certain policies, I mean, in a number of different fields in the U.S. government, and a lot of them are like hundreds of pages, sometimes even thousands of pages. So that always intimidated me personally. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. So I was wondering, like, if you guys could share your own experiences in helping make and form policies, and how long they are, and the process that goes into that, if that makes sense.
Great question.
Yeah.
I haven't actually made any policy. The focus of what I've done was analyzing policies and legislation, so both within our coursework and then with my internship. So, and then in my work now, we do look at legislation and policy because it does impact our clients and informs the work that we do. So I don't know if anyone else has.
Wait, but I'm also interested in possibly becoming like a policy analyst. So I mean, if you want to share your experiences on that, it's fine.
So with the work that I did with Jane Doe, between January and July, you have the governor's bill, the House bill, the Senate bill. They're all putting their budgets forward. So part of my role was to look at any of the policies that were DV, domestic violence or sexual assault related, and sort of analyze them for Jane Doe, see who had signed on, see where the traction was. So it was not necessarily, it was legislative analysis, and the policy analysis came more from our coursework, looking at whatever your subject happened to be. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on this because it was more in the framework of our coursework. So I don't know if you want to speak to that. You may have more policy work depending on what you've done.
Yeah, you go first.
So yes. So policy work for me in my current position can be anything from like, so here's an example of like a really like pretty simple policy that I just adjusted. So in our summer youth employment program, we put to work like this summer like 700 young people. And so each, like based on their age, we were giving young people different wages just for no other reason other than like, you're 14 and 15, so you're gonna get $7.88. And because this person's 18 but in the same exact place where this 14-year-old is working, the 18-year-old is going to get 1050, like, no matter what. So that just didn't make any sense to me. So I literally just like took the policy and changed it to like all young people in the One Providence for Youth program will be paid $10.50 an hour. And that was like a policy change. And so sometimes policy changes can be like as short as like 2 pages. Like there was one, we had piloted a program working with 15 formerly gang-involved young people, and we wanted to put them in our program. But there was an issue when we were putting young people onto the City of Providence payroll, because if you have a background or like a criminal background, you technically cannot be employed by the City of Providence. So that obviously was like an issue, because like we're trying to put 15 former gang involved young people into a job in the city, and like we technically can't do that. So that policy then changed to, if you are under the age of 18, you are fine. Like over 18, like not a problem. And so right now I'm working with like some folks in the mayor's administration to change that policy altogether. And we're gonna be doing like a comprehensive analysis of like all like the policies that exist citywide on people that have previous convictions. There are some policies that I've worked on that, I mean, there's like city ordinances that I have to like follow, like that are like I don't know, like 10 pages, some are like 40 pages. There's one federal program that I'm working on, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, which is like this huge like federal grant that like every single state in the country gets. And it's like thousands and thousands of pages of like federal regulations and federal laws. But in our office, we have like the opportunity to change our internal policies for like how we're going to like work the program, if that makes any sense. So it really can vary from like anything from like, I've changed one line in a policy, and that was it, and it changed, and now everyone in the program gets 1050, like no matter what they do, or something as big as like a very comprehensive, like I just did an 80-page policy book on like on-the-job trainings, like which was like wild. But yeah, it really ranges. Does that answer that question? Okay.
Well, so I did policy analysis for my internship, so I didn't have to formally give it to anyone except my internship boss. So I worked under the policy and advocacy team at Planned Parenthood. So they decided, they kind of decided the internship topic, which is what's something that we keep hearing about that we know we kind of have to get a stance on and get a feel for what's going on in this issue, and it was sexual assault on college campuses. A lot of their organizers had brought it up. So at that point in the session, I think 7 bills around it had been introduced, and so my job was to go through every one, but they were all very small because they were new. I think one was to form a whole commission around it. One was just to do an exploratory study, so they weren't very in-depth. They weren't really suggesting any solution. It was more, let's see what's going on. And so my job at the internship was to break down all parts of it. They were small, so that wasn't too much of a lift, and then recommend any of those policies to the team. I think they weren't ready to adopt any of those at that time, so it didn't go too far, but that was something that in that organization they wouldn't have had the capacity to look at had I not been there. So there's power in that, but a lot less in depth than that 80-page book, but it was still important work, even at the bottom level. So.
Oh, I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, just let me check with others. Any other questions that you want to ask at this point? You want to come up, and then Opal will get back to you.
Hello, and thank you for coming back to campus. My name is Ade. I am a career specialist here at UMass Boston, and I am super excited you guys are here because you're talking about women in careers relating to politics. And one of the things that we do come across is people wondering how they're going to figure out their paths, right? And so you all have figured out your career paths one way or the other, and it's all different. And so I am interested in how you give back. So how do you give back to current UMass students? Do you mentor current students? Do you have the time to mentor current students? Because there might be students who could benefit from learning your path. And I'm sure, I think somebody said, before I came to this program, I was very shy, and this program helped you kind of like, expand your horizons. How can you give back to a student who's very shy, who might not know how to network? Because we say network all the time, right? And not till you get to a certain stage, you don't really realize the power that it has, and you don't realize how to do it very well, compared to a student who might not know how to do it. So how do you give back? You first.
Well, well, I would say that it depends on what age and like what your goal is, I guess. So at the moment, this is my first thing at UMass Boston, having graduated last year. Other things that I have done in the past is like going to a Boys and Girls Club event in my hometown, helping kids that are in high school like update their LinkedIn profile, explaining to them how it's not like Facebook. You don't want to be friends with everybody. You actually want to be friends with the people that can help you and what types of things you post. So I guess there's different angles that you can take. And then something I would really like to look into, but I'm not actually sure how it would work, is looking at Europe is a organization within Boston. Can we take a couple people at my office like over the summer where we can have interns come in, make sure that they get a really good experience, something that we did at my past company. And then also one thing that I know UMass Boston is always looking for is internships for this program. So just talking to some charities today, I'm actually going to recommend that they reach out if they're looking for volunteers, so that people can have that opportunity to intern, and just forwarding along that information of people who I know who could use the help. I know that they would give them a lot of good coursework, etc. And that's it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Any others?
Networking, I still hate it, but I recognize the power it has. So I would say bring a really outgoing friend and just have a buddy. That would be my advice, and I'm trying to think of what helped me. I think you just have to keep going. Like even now, I had to go to a fundraiser of my old job, and I'm like hating it up until I'm there, and then I'm like, okay, I can eat a little food, I can go say hello, but it does help to have a friend with you that knows more people or more outgoing that can help introduce you, or you can just kind of latch on to for the night. You mentioned mentoring. I don't currently mentor any students, but I'm open. I would say in person, not so much, because it is an hour and a half to get here on the public transportation, but via the internet or phone, I'm always open. I think I've chatted to a few GLPP prospects over the years, but just very briefly, not really a relationship basis, but I think that's something we should do more of, so I'm definitely interested in virtual mentorships.
Very briefly, we do take interns at my work, but we have colleges in our area. I don't know how convenient it would be for UMass Boston students, unless they lived in Essex County, if they would like to intern with a domestic violence agency. Have them talk to me, or if they want to volunteer in the courts, I'm more than happy. I've taken on several interns in the past couple years, so I'm happy to do that. And then whatever Muna needs from us, we generally rise to the clarion call. So we are, but sure, we're happy to help in any way that we can. We have students.
So I think the major way I give back is I've put 700 young people to work into internships. And so I'm more than happy to work with folks that are coming through this program. I do a lot of career planning with young people in our program, where we do peer peer-to-peer, like one-on-ones with participants in our program. It's very structured, it's very rigorous. There's like skills, competencies, and we're like assessing at different benchmarks of their internship. So I'm more than happy to like talk to folks that are in the program if they're in, like thinking about like internships. Like I'm like very happy to help like navigate like that process. If there's ever anyone who wants to intern in Rhode Island, like I'm your girl. I will hunt down whatever it is that person wants to intern. But I obviously know that like interning in Rhode Island is like a little unrealistic when here in Massachusetts. But if we're interested in if any folks are interested in like working with like an elected official, like Andrea Campbell, the Sheriff's Department, and like the City Council, the City of Boston in general, like it's pretty likely that I'm going to know someone there and can do like a little bit of a warm handoff to that person in the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. And thank you for coming to campus.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Okay, also, why don't you ask your next question?
All right. Thank you. And before I start, I just want to say thank you guys again so much for coming. I mean, like I know like it was only a few people that showed up, but don't let that discourage you. Honestly, if you could just help a few people, then you've made a difference. But my question is geared more towards Colleen, was it? Yeah. Okay. So I remember you mentioning more towards the beginning that there was, how would I say it? I guess like you helped improve diversity and the areas that you worked in and stuff like that. And I mean, like that's a problem that you hear about a lot. But I guess I'm wondering like what led to like what are some of the problems facing certain communities that would lead to them not having as much access to these types of opportunities or resources. So what were some of those problems that you had to overcome or that you noticed while working in this field?
So I think the best example I can think of is in our summer youth employment program, we have a specific program that we call advanced internships. And we work with, this is only open to young people that have some type, either like a high school degree or like or seniors, and they have some type of work experience, and they're only eligible for this program under those two premises. This is probably one of our most premier programs. Of like the bigger program that we have, we only have 200 slots for this advanced internship program, and these internships are exclusive to like private employers. So like you're not going to be placed in City Hall, like you're going to be placed with like Gilbane or like Avolis, which is like a international like plastic manufacturing company. And so when I first came into the city, I was told by the person that was previously administering the program, last year we piloted this program with 50 young people, and there's no way that you're going to get Providence youth into these private internships. They're not ready. They cannot read and write at the level that they can be emailing and communicating with private employers in the way that they need to. They do not have the soft skills, and they do not have the like hard technical skills to succeed and thrive in these businesses. And she was very like transparent and honest, and she said, "I'm not saying this in a bad way. I'm saying like I had actually put young people into some of these private employers that were not ready, that were Providence youth coming out of like the highest unemployment, like highest poverty zones in the city, and they did not do well. The employers were angry with us, and like they would not come back into the program." And she was kind of giving it to me as like a heads up, and I was like, okay, well, thank you so much for that. And I was just like, again, rage, that kind of set in for me, and I was like, this program this year is only going to be open to Providence residents. I am not going to be putting someone in another higher, like wealthier part of the state of Rhode Island into a program with City of Providence dollars. Like that's not happening over my dead body. And so I like really went to the youth because I was new to the city. I didn't know anything. So I just like went to one of the after school programs and was like, how do I get more Providence kids into these advanced internships? And they were like, well, maybe you should do like after school programs in the the springtime to prepare us for when the summertime comes, because all the other schools in the state do like career readiness and career pathway work that we don't have access to. Like, why don't you do like bring in some of the employers in like the springtime to like help and prep us, like have staff that can actually speak the language that I'm speaking, that can speak Spanish, because I mean 75% of the student population in the city of Providence is Latino, and we have like over 50% of our students are ELLs, and which are English language learners, but like that's not represented, and like the employers that we were working with were not diverse. So we were sending young people into like very like hostile, not safe places for them to be. In many instances, the only person from the city of Providence that some of these employers had ever interfaced with. And so after talking with the youth, we were really able to be like, okay, we know that our young people are not like fluent in some of these like key competencies, but they are really great at some of these other competencies. And so we had to work very diligently. We did like 3 interview sessions with young people. We were very particular. We actually went into schools, like while school was still in session, and like we're coordinating with the principals and guidance counselors to actually talk to the youth and like figure out like, what do you need to prep you before you actually get put into this internship? Because no one was doing that work, because like you didn't need to do that work for some of like the other students that were coming from wealthier parts of the state, because that was embedded in the regular school curriculum, and it wasn't for our Providence youth. And so that was a really simple way. I mean, 75% of the young people that were in our program were children of color. And even in that specific advanced internship program, it was like 98% of the young people in that program were children of color, and 100% were Providence residents. So we just, by talking to the youth and really listening to them and creating space for them to guide the dialogue, like actually having residents have a seat at the table and lead like the policy that's being made about their lives, like really drastically impacts like the way the policy works.
And I'm assuming that as a result of the intensive work that you obviously did with these students, you saw improvement in the work that they were able to put out and the company's response to the children that you were sending in.
Yeah, so this program is funded through the state, like the governor's office gives like different cities and towns different like blocks of money to do like this particular program. And we just got back our survey results from employers, like based on like what their experience was. And our employers were at a higher percentage impressed by the young people that were placed in their programs than they were in all the other programs in the state. So to me, that signals that the work that we're really intensive, like face-to-face, one-on-one work that we're doing with young people that really need that support is actually outperforming the wealthier parts of the state.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You all were awesome. I'm so impressed and proud of all of you, and just so excited about the work that you're doing and the difference that you're making in the microphone. So, go right ahead.
All right. Just want to say thank you to you guys. You're all incredibly awesome. It's just we're all so proud of you, and thank you so much for coming out. You know, and thank you for thank you for the shout outs. And yeah. So anyway, so we can't thank you enough. Thanks.
I just want to also assure you all that the video of this is going to be posted so that all of our students, our current students who are both on-campus students and online students, will be able to see it and have access to it. And I know it'll be really helpful to them. So many thanks again, and good luck with everything you're doing, and we can all keep in touch.